Hey, what's up, guys? Hope you're doing well. I want to share about how we came about naming our first son, our first child, the firstborn, Beckham Scott Biar. So the last name, we just went ahead and gave him ours. Classic choice, right? That was not a discussion on our end. But naming our first kid, we had a girl name in mind, like by the time we got pregnant. But we did not know what we would name our child if it were a boy. And so every now and then on a date night, we would just be like throwing out names or, reading through a name book or name list online, whatever. Nothing really stuck. There were a lot of things that we felt about our preferences in picking a name. For example, I had some preferences like I wanted the name to be not the name that's in the Bible. I don't know why exactly I had that preference, but that was a preference that I had. I think one reason is because many biblical characters, we don't actually know that much about them. And then of the, few paragraphs that we might have, or even a few chapters we might have, there might be some pretty significant just moments of sin in the life of X, Y, or Z biblical character. And I just feel like that must be kind of hard to read when you're like, oh, that's who I'm named after, and you might not necessarily have the maturity when you're 7 years old internalizing this story to chew the meat and spit out the bones. It might feel like not that much of a blessing, I don't know. And so anyways, we didn't want to pick a biblical name. Also, it can be limiting in terms of what you feel like you're called to, or what you feel like your personality should be like. We kind of associate different biblical characters with kind of person profiles, and I didn't want our kids to feel limited in that way. Similarly, I didn't want a name that meant something that had a strong personality connotation to it, or even just a meaning that is, I guess, like basic. Let me give an example. If a name meant strong, for example, that's not really that good of an example. But if it did, that person might, if they were a boy, feel like they got to be physically strong, Or let's say a name meant leader. In our culture, leader means loud, type A, very, very like masculine, like just historically, generically masculine traits. And that's not necessarily what a leader is, but in our culture, we associate that word leader with a type of personality, a type of, even the choices in terms of your hobbies and interests, whatever it may be. And so I didn't want a name that just meant one thing, or could be strongly associated with a personality. Because what if you name your kid a name that means leader, and they're very more on the sensitive side of the spectrum, they're very more on the passive side of the personality spectrum? Like, does that become this internal tension where, obviously through good parenting, none of these things are actual like concerns, but just like idealistically, I'm like, man, I wouldn't want my child to feel like they're supposed to be something that they're not because of what their name seems to mean to them, you know? And so wanted a name that was more open to interpretation so that our kid can discover for themselves who God has made them to be and kind of interpret their name in the way that is most meaningful for them as they grow into it. So those were two big preferences. And then another is just very, very simply, we wanted to like the name. That probably feels like duh, but that's, you know, easier said than done sometimes. Like what do we like? What sounds good? Kind of like, you know, we wanted it to be kind of maybe uncommon-ish. Not a super common name, but also like not super unique. Megan felt really strongly like she didn't want to have a name that sounds like a made-up name. Like, wants it to be a name that people know is a name. Wanted it to be a relatively unique name. Wanted it to be a relatively cool name. Not too cool, but just you associate it as like, that kid could be cool, right? I also had a preference, like, I didn't want to pick a name that, and this was very low on the list, but I wouldn't say that I wanted a multicultural name, but I wanted a name that wouldn't only ever be named to a specific ethnicity, if that makes sense. And that's probably just because my name Jeremy is relatively shared. I know some Hispanic Jeremys and some Black Jeremys and some white Jeremys. It's probably not an even distribution, but I'm just saying they're out there, and I liked that. And so I didn't want to, I liked the thought of passing that on as well. So those were some things we were thinking about, but we were getting nowhere on the boy name, especially the first name. The middle name, I'll start with there. We kind of came to that decision sooner. Not like a full decision, but we thought Scott is my dad's middle name, but it is what he goes by, Scott Biar. But his signature is sometimes L. Scott Biar. I'll let him tell you what his first name is, because he did not want to pass it on. I don't think he loved having it as his first name in elementary school. But especially with our firstborn son, and obviously, like, you know, we're you know, pretty traditional in terms of how we view our marriage and everything. So it's not like, but maybe different in some ways. But the thought of, hey, we're passing on, you know, the BR last name. Truly, like, both, you know, Megan joined my family and I joined her family in terms of in-laws. It's not like my family is the only family that, you know, has inheritance in Megan's and my kids, you know. But the thought of our firstborn son being named after the dad's side of the line just felt good to me, and to Megan as well. Felt fitting, and I didn't want to give either of my names to our son and now sons, because to me that felt like playing favorites. Like, oh, you're the son that's named Jeremy Wayne Jr. You know, like, I don't really want to do that to, what if we have another son, you know? And it feels a little weird to, not too weird, but also, like, I don't really want to honor myself in that way, or put myself on a pedestal in my kid's life. Like, I want to earn that, you know? I don't want to tell them how much I mean to them. I want them to tell me how much I mean to them, you know. So didn't want it to be my name, but wanted it to come from my line, and specifically my paternal line, you know. So from my dad's side, for my firstborn specifically. And Scott was just the move, because I just want to honor my dad, and my dad's really marked with humility, really marked with integrity, really marked with peace and faithfulness and stewardship. He's just a great man, an amazing man. And obviously I know him much better than I know my grandparents or their grandparents. And so that's just, and he hasn't, you know, Scott is not a family name unless we turned it into a family name. He was the first one to have that name, I think, in our line. And it's also just a good name. You know, the connotation of that name is like just a good guy, a good friend, hard worker. If you know a Scott, it probably are those things. And so anyways, but just to us, the meaning of the name, the actual meaning means from Scotland. So, you know, nothing too inspiring there, but for Megan and I, the meaning really is like our generational history. You know, my dad, his dad, the Biar line. That's more what the name is about for us, rather than from Scotland. And so just believing those traits will be in Beckham's life. And then with Beckham, Megan and I were on a date night, and we're like, you know what, let's throw out some names in a British accent. Just let's think of some British names. And we were just having fun going back and forth trying to think of anything we could think of, and I came out with Beckham. I'll spare you the accent impersonation because Megan says that I'm very bad at doing accents, and if she says that, you know she's telling the truth, okay? She wouldn't lie to me about that. It's unfortunate, but it's true. But I said that, and before that, you know, we listed several names, and we're just kind of laughing, and then I said Beckham, and we're kind of like, well, I kind of like that. Like, it passed the I like that name test. And you know, it's kind of, you know, obviously the name Beckham is made famous by David Beckham, and I did play soccer growing up, so, you know, there's some I have like a positive association with David Beckham, but it's not like I'm trying to make my kids be soccer players or anything. But also the way that, you know, just he's just very English, you know, and the way that he leads his family, you know, you can tell that just like honor and integrity and wholesome values just means a lot to them. So it's just a generally like respected name. And we knew of some people naming kids Beckham, so we knew, you know, hopefully it doesn't become like the most popular name ever given to his age. But it didn't feel like we're going out a huge limb. Anyways, we look up the meaning, and it means homestead by the stream. So just a perfect meaning for us in terms of what I described earlier. It can mean a lot of different things, but it's not something that can only mean like a particular personality, or it doesn't have to mean anything that you don't want it to mean, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But we really liked the imagery of that, and we really felt like before Beckham was born, which now we know his personality, and it's like, wow, this really seems to like fit well, which is cool. And he has blue eyes like my dad does, even though Megan and I both have hazel eyes. So that's cool that he got my dad's eyes and his name. But homestead by the stream, like when you think about a homestead, you think about a large property. So there's some like I think about stewardship in terms of taking care of the land, doing all the tasks related to, you know, the property or the plants or the animals or the home, whatever it may be. But also, you know, you must have stewarded some type of wealth to a certain degree to own that property in the first place. And so I felt like stewardship would be a theme, but also this like caretaking, nurturing type of stewardship. Like I just get this mental image of Beckham like knowing the name of every tree, you know, like not quite Pocahontas vibes, but just kind of like that. And I just realized, I'm just gonna tell you guys, okay, but I just realized there's a hole in my jeans, and I'm about to go to this meeting at a coffee shop, so I gotta make sure that I keep my legs crossed today. And who knows how long this hole has been here, because I wear these jeans all the time. Oh man. Well, if you're listening to this and you happened to know about this hole in my jeans, listen. That is not cool, okay? You need to send me a text when you realize I'm walking around with holy jeans in a dangerous place. Back to the name story. I'm embarrassed. Homestead by the stream. Stewardship, nurturing. Also this fathering feel. You know, this leadership that's not necessarily going to feel like big arms leadership. You know, but this more like, hey, we have rooms available. Like that, like I think about, you know, all the family coming to the homestead, you know, just, and I think about not just family, but even people who are hurting or broken or need restoration or looking for just peace. Like, man, there's space on a homestead to cover people, to protect people, to provide just this very fathering feel. And then by the stream, unsurprisingly, we were thinking about, man, we want our son to be planted by streams of living water. Like we want him to be connected to Jesus, to the Word of God, you know, just to life in him, not just Beckham's life, you know, but the life with God that God envisions to have with Beckham. And so those are just some things that we really liked about that name. And man, on that date night, we're like, I think we might have just found it. And we did a little bit more searching around, but we just loved it. Slept on it. And we're like, this is it. And we found out he was a boy, and so it was Beckham Scott Biar. And now we know who he is. Turns 4 this June. He's amazing. Such an amazing boy, and one day an amazing man. Just love him so much. And yeah, I'm excited to see like what he does with his name's meaning. You know, how much it'll mean to him, and different things that he even adds, different things that he sees in my dad's life, different things that he sees from the thought of a homestead and by a stream, and things that he can draw out of those things that we didn't even necessarily know or think or have in mind. I'm excited to see what stands out to him the most. But that's a little bit about just how God led Megan and I in naming our son and ultimately giving us a son. You know, just so thankful for just God's just will to place Beckham in our family. I tell him every night that I'm so thankful to be his dada, and I'm so thankful that he's my son. I really tell him that multiple times a day, but it's just so true. And I now also tell Hudson that. But this is getting to be a long enough video, so we'll probably call it for now. I'll probably save some, you know, how God's used me in parenting and stuff for maybe some future videos. But the name story, here it is. we were like, God, what do you want this kid to be named? And also, what do we want? And how do those work together? And it just worked. So I'm thankful. We'll see when Beckham gets older if he likes his name or not. But hope he does. Anyways, that's all I got for y'all today. Life is worship. God is love.